Occupy Wall Street returned to the streets in an effort to revitalize the movement and its message. This march, in support of May Day, will be the first opportunity to gain significant media attention for the movement this year. After the eviction from Zuccotti Park last fall, the movement had languished. In the past, many have argued that Occupy had failed to articulate anything more than a general frustration with the current economic system and overall frustration with the protracted recession. Lacking a greater message or clear demands had not diminished the passion of the Occupy Wall Street protests the previous fall. With so many different events planned around New York City, the opportunity to revitalize the movement and clearly articulate a platform going forward was at hand.
Tell me what democracy looks like!
Has Occupy managed to get its message out to the vast majority they claim to represent? And is it the fault of the organization if they're not? Is the message just not reaching the people? Well, perception is reality, they say. So what does that reality look like?
Well, generally I think it was confused, misdirected, misinformed, and I'm not sure if the people running it knew really what they were doing. I think some of what some people might have said has a little bit of truth to it, in that there is some problems with Wall Street, both in infrastructure, and there may have been some who were greedy or criminal. But for the most part, I do not agree with the Occupy Wall Street movement. I never went down to Zuccotti Park, but it is my habit to watch all news media, both liberal and conservative, to get my information, and that's what I did. Say in general, no, it seemed to be very confused. In one snippet that I saw on TV, the crowd was chanting, "What do we want? We don't know. When do we want it? Now." And that had to been the stupidest thing anybody could have said.
Clearly, the message of Occupy has been formulated by the media's representation of the movement's goals and aims. What does that message look like?
On this May Day, around the world, across the country, there were marches and protests focused on the rights of workers. The Occupy Wall Street movement kind of re-emerged on the scene here in New York after being dormant most of the cold weather months. We
haven't seen much of Occupy Boston since a small group gathered in front of the State House to protest some MBTA fare hikes a few weeks ago. Well, tonight they maintain they have a message. He thinks it's unfortunate the occupiers wanted to disrupt the city's economy, especially in the banking industry, where people today were just trying to go to work.
Begin tonight with some breaking news and thousands of people protesting right now in Lower Manhattan. Occupy Wall Street demonstrators joining labor unions for an annual May Day protest.
Well, Bill, this is the final leg of today's protest. The demonstrators have left Union Square. They are now headed down to the Wall Street area. And you can see from these live pictures of Newscopter 7, they are making their way down Broadway. They are at around 8th Street right now. We're told there are thousands of them. This is the most we've seen of Occupy Wall Street since last fall.
They chanted about the 99%, but asked protesters why they participate, and the message of the movement still as muddled as ever.
It isn't just the copy that the reporters read that sets the tone. There seems to be no shortage of sound bites that make the protesters seem foolish and uninformed themselves, hurting the dissemination of the message of the Occupy Wall Street movement even further.
Permit to throw people out of their homes. I think that bothers people. You know, you need a permit to not pay taxes when everybody else is paying 3 times what you're paying and you're making 1,000,000 times more.
It's all about wages. It's all about fair employment.
Trying to end imperialism.
It's about the way that we treat queer, transgendered people, women, people of color.
I don't want to get anything across.
I'm just here.
We gotta protest. We gotta change. We gotta make a move because, I mean, there are enough people out here, but there's also enough people that don't know enough, and we gotta make that change.
I think Occupy Wall Street is a platform for many, many different groups. We don't all support each other, but we're all here to improve the country.
And the late night talk shows have done their part as well.
Thank you for assembling peacefully here tonight. Are you here for the show, or is this an Occupy protest? You know, there were a bunch of Occupy protests around the country today. It was May Day. These are protesters marching here in L.A., downtown L.A. In Chicago, about, I guess, 1,000 people or so were demonstrating. Even more showed up in New York. About 30 people were arrested in New York. Protests aren't violent in Seattle and Oakland. You know, it's weird. I feel like none of these people even care that we're down to the final 6 on Dancing with the Stars. There were protests in London, Toronto, Barcelona, and Sydney, too. All around the world, protest organizers asked supporters to skip work, walk out of school, and refrain from shopping, banking, and doing any business at all today. In New York, they had something called a guitarmy. This was a big group of people who marched with guitars, banjos, ukuleles, various stringed instruments, and they called it a guitarmy, which is... it's guitarded is what it is. I think there are a lot of good things about the Occupy movement, but what the participants seem to do more than anything is give terrible sound bites to local news reporters.
This is all part of the Four Winds ground strike taking place today on May Day. We stopped to ask some folks taking part in it what today's May Day demonstration was about. Here's what they told us. Do you know what that means?
Actually, no, but...
You're holding a sign, but you don't know what it means?
Well, I assume it means something against excess taxes.
In fairness, it's hard to think and march at the same time.
So the question remains, is it really that difficult to find protesters that actually can answer a question intelligently? Does the media have it right? Is this just a collection of mindless people with nothing better to do?
Well, I think it's this idea that there is no alternative that we have had for at least 30 years now of neoliberalism just seems less and less possible, less and less likely when we have this many people out in the streets, when we have these kind of occupies across the country, to some extent across the world.
Exactly that, making it visible, making the conversation, changing the framing of the debate, right? It's like often I think prior to Occupy Wall Street, we never really actually saw anyone talking about, the major inequalities in our country as far as wages go, as far as taxes go, and I don't know, it's at least framed the debate to further.
It's funny because there's a whole spectrum of answers to that. If you remember back last summer, basically all the conversation was almost like singularly about, like cutting spending, cutting funding of all these things. Occupy Wall Street totally 180 that conversation into one about like, hey, the banks got bailed out. Instead of cutting all the funding for various, everything from social programs, the arts, transportation, et cetera, that these are things we need to invest in the people as much as opposed to investing in finance capital. Put a location for all of us to meet up together and see each other and have this conversation in terms of, instead of me behind a computer complaining about something and that guy behind a computer complaining about something, that we actually met each other and then we're together and then we're able to plan on what can we do working forward organizationally. And we've seen a lot of things come out of this, such as Occupy the SEC, writing that great response to basically various SEC sort of proposals for laws. So I think one of the main things it's done for society is just let us find our affinity.
It's clear that whatever this power is all we have right now. It's our best bet. Democracy isn't working in the way that it used to, and this is the best we can do, is coming together and trying to make our voices heard in this way. That not being sure is a good enough reason not to show up. I think that whether or not we see the results, we have to take a little bit of a longer view, and it can't be an excuse to stay home.
A useful way to describe power relations in our society. So, it means you're not one of the very small number of people who control how our society works, how the economy works, and how politics work.
Well, I think reframing that debate also changes the power dynamic. The person who controls the conversation is the person who's ultimately in control of that conversation, right? So, and in control of the debate. So if we can start to redefine what people are when they think of economic success and failure, then that's the beginning.
It's taking a humanistic view of the world that values people over I guess the little slogan that has been said is people over profit, but I think it's a good one. And I think it just means that I stand in solidarity with people who are struggling economically and not getting their needs met by this system.
I guess the people that aren't heard of as much.
Being part of the 99% to me means I'm speaking up for my son. I'm speaking up for his future.
Clearly, the media has set the agenda for Occupy Wall Street. Maybe it's time to take it back.
Sets us free. Standing up in public space. 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 The city wants to raise the stakes. Our rights are there within its gates. Let's go there, not incorporate. The freedom waits. The freedom waits for us. Take it, children. Speaking freely. Speaking. Set us free. You got such strong opinions. I got my own orations. We got such strong. Do we believe? Visions. We've got our own elections. Breaking into public space. We're breaking into public space today. Breaking into public space. Breaking into public space. The city waits for us to see this park, this sidewalk, and this street. The heart of where we come to be. The citizens, all who still believe. Watch out there! You've got such strong opinions. We've got strong opinions here. My own oration. I want to orate. Such strong revisions. We've got our own election. You've got such strong opinions. I got my own oration. Come on. Such revisions. Come on. Our own election. Do you believe?